Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us in the chat room. I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 3, 2, 1. Ryan's here. Matthew's here. The whole gang. Kevin. Hello. We've got a big show today. Very excited. But yeah, that is not the actual intro. That's your private intro. Brian's here. Say hi, Brian.
Hey. Hi.
Oh yeah, we haven't confirmed your sound. Are you doing okay there?
Check, mic check.
Wow, that was nice. Only sounded like that all the time in the show. But
Don't
okay.
I?
No, I guess.
Oh, no, I get it.
Okay, so yeah, you're gonna do a pre-roll, and then we're gonna start. So I'll mute myself and let's do this. Wait, what is this question here about Foligno or Dadonov? You should drop Foligno for Dadonov. That's the answer. And if you have any bangers but you need your hits, get hits somewhere else. Dude, there's a bunch of hits in free agency. Always. It's easy to find. It's the easiest category to find in free agency. Dadonov's not so easy to find. Okay, Brian, go for
it. Just a sec.
Okay. Oscars? Oh yeah, my dad's at an Oscars party tonight. Then I asked him if he's seen any of the movies, and he said no. Then I was like, wait, we saw Shape of Water together. And he was like, oh yeah. He doesn't even care. Why is he watching the show? All right. Anyway, go ahead, Brian.
Oh, I'm still not ready.
I asked you before I started. I was like, are you ready for the pre-roll? I got the text right here.
Okay. Well, no, I'm ready for that. I'm just not ready for life in general.
Are you like looking for a job for tomorrow?
No, I've got a job tomorrow. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, Matthew, Shape of Water was dope. It was good.
Was it better than Get Out?
I mean, it's a very different type of movie. I don't want to compare.
Which one entertained you more?
I like that. Like, I don't even compare. It's like every day now, because I know we're playing fantasy hockey. Obviously, here we have to be like this player, this player. You can only choose one. In movies, just see both movies. They're both exceptional movies. I'm not going to tell you which one is better. They're both great. I have nothing bad to say about either of them.
Okay. I just thought you might, if you had to give an award to one of them, if you could only watch one of them again for the rest of your life, which one would it be?
Don't you think it's dumb that they have a separate award for Best Actor and Best Actress? Like, what year is this? Do they even know that it's International Women's Day coming up? Like, let's get serious here. Acting is acting. It's not a different job if you're a man or a woman. Why not just have Best Actor overall? Or top
very much agreed, but maybe they should have two just so they can still, share the wealth around. But they're just like the two best actors of the year in no specific order.
Or just do Olympic style, gold, silver, bronze.
Shake
it up. Every once in a while, it's okay to shake things up, right? You don't have to, just because something's a tradition doesn't mean you have to do it forever. We gotta start this show. Let's go.
What's our tradition?
Starting the show.
Well, we don't have to do that forever. Okay.
Just now.
Are you ready?
Yes!
Okay. This episode of Keeping Karlsson is sponsored in part by FanDuel. Hockey is happening, which means daily fantasy hockey is happening on FanDuel. FanDuel has something for everyone, including new contests every day starting at just $1. And of course, you can take on Elon and I in our Keeping Karlsson Listener League. Our contests open Tuesday morning and run for each...
Brian, it's not even true, right? Are we even doing a contest tomorrow?
I guess we are. If we're running this ad, we are.
Okay. Can you start over? I feel like we should at least have the pre-roll with no mistakes, right? So I don't have to edit the pre-roll.
Okay.
You could do this.
Our contest... Hang on. I'll just...
rewrite your copy.
Tuesday
Dave
morning.
is here. Hey, Dave. Sorry about this technical difficulty. Brian has trouble reading sometimes.
I was flying until you got in the way.
No, you were like,
no,
contest start, contest.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
This episode of Keeping Karlsson is sponsored in part by FanDuel. Hockey is happening, which means daily fantasy hockey is happening on FanDuel. FanDuel has something for everyone, including new contests every day starting at just $1. And now you can take on Elon and I in our Keeping Karlsson Listener League. Our contest opens Tuesday morning, running on Tuesday night's games. Join us by heading over to fanduel.com/Karl, fanduel.com/KARL. See you there.
Okay, music starts. And here we go. That's not our music, but I didn't want to sing the whole song. Okay. Yeah! Yes! Thank you, everybody, for tuning into another episode of the Keeping Karlsson Fantasy Hockey Podcast, the best fantasy hockey podcast in the world, hosted by two guys own Eric Karlsson in their keeper pools. I'm your host, Elon Dubrovsky. Big show this week. I've been so excited about it all day to chat with my friend, the fantasy hockey robot himself, Brian Cohn.
What a wonderful intro, Elon, as always. Inspired by the darkness, I think. And yeah, Elon, you and I, we're like friends in a candy shop doing this podcast. We're always like picking out gummies for one another.
I don't even get that analogy at all. Did you think about that just now, or was that something you prepared all day?
I wrote it down as I watched the season debut of Survivor.
Oh, good reference. Okay, now I get it. Okay, I'm sorry I called you out. Brian, okay, good job. I'm very excited, everyone. Like I said, we still have to talk about all these trades that happened on Monday. Our patrons got our early takes on our Patreon cast on Thursday, which is still available. By the way, it was a fun show. Anyways, I won't promote that. We got to get going, so we're going to talk about trades. There's a whole bunch of injuries and outjuries, hot streaks, cold streaks. A lot of people are going into their fantasy playoffs. People who are in the Keeping Karlsson Ultimate Patron Fantasy League are already done round one of their playoffs. So, we've got lots going on. So let's get into it all. But first, of course, we have to mention that we are presented by the best fantasy hockey website out there, which is dobberhockey.com, your source for everything fantasy hockey. You've got your articles, rankings, these daily ramblings, super useful if you just want to know who to pick up for the next day, who did well on a given day. Then you've got all the tools on frozen pools, your starting goalies, line combinations in real time. It's all there. Check it out, dobberhockey.com. Brian, okay, I think we should start with trades, and then we'll bounce around a little bit from there. But let's go back to Monday. If we go back actually to our previous episode, we already talked about a couple of trades that the New York Rangers made. We talked about Rick Nash going to Boston. We talked about Grabner going to the Devils, but they did it again. They pulled off yet another deal, as they said, Ryan McDonough and JT Miller to Tampa Bay for Vladislav Nemesnikov and a bunch of picks and nobodies. Who cares for right now? So let's start with the Rangers side of things, and I guess redo our analysis of the fantasy capabilities of their roster now that all these trades are done. Last week, we looked into what's going to be the effect of Nash and Grabner being gone. Of course, we didn't account for JT Miller also being gone, Nemesnikov being in the picture, McDonough gone. So, okay, let's take a look at what the lines were for yesterday's 3-2 win over the Oilers. They were rolling with Zibanejad, Kreider, and Buchnevich for line one, Zuccarello, Vesey, and Nemesnikov, and then Spooner, Hayes, and Fast. And then on the top power play, they went with Buchnevich, Kreider, Zibanejad, Zuccarello, and a guy named John Gilmore, who I'll ask you about in a second. So, but overall, these are some decent looking lines for a team that was a seller at the deadline. No, not so bad.
They're not so bad. A lot of middle talent, great pieces for a top nine, but they really are missing some high end pieces beyond Mika Zibanejad, right? I don't know how many teams in the league would like to have both Chris Kreider and Pavel Buchnevich filling out their very top line. So yeah, a lot of good middle six types, missing the higher end pieces, but we've seen the New York Rangers get by on middle six types before.
Yeah, so obviously I'm not saying they're going to make a playoff run right now, but there might be some fantasy value to be mined here. Let's start with Nemesnikov, who joins the team. He had obviously a great start of the season with Kucherov and Stamkos. We all remember everyone rushing to grab him. He was the hottest guy in the league. Hopefully you sold high. We've already said this a long time ago on Tampa, where he was getting bumped from the top line and lost a lot of his fantasy value. Now he goes to the Rangers, and the question is he done? Or is this maybe going to be the chance for him to have a resurgence? He had a goal and an assist in his first game on the Rangers on Tuesday. He's been pointless in the 2 games since then. Is he a snoozer right now, Brian, or are you now re-interested in Vladislav Nemesnikov playing on a line, like I said, with Zuccarello and Vesey, which isn't great, but Zuccarello's pretty good?
So the answer to this question lies in just how much we can rely on Nemesnikov creating his own offense or contributing enough to be able to keep up some measure of what he was doing in Tampa. So let's look at what he did in Tampa. At even strength, Vladislav Nemesnikov did not score a single goal that was not assisted on by either Stamkos or Kucherov. 7 of his 14 even strength assists came on goals scored by either Stamkos or Kucherov. And this is not necessarily a slight against him. I know it's coming off that way, but any skilled player, including Nemesnikov, playing with those guys night in, night out, would be posting similar numbers. Of course, you're going to be tied together to Stamkos and Kucherov, but it is still a prompt for us to pause and consider how much Nemesnikov has proved he can do without those two. And the answer is Well, not very much. Granted, Nemestikov has not had a ton of opportunity to do just that, but I don't think he's quite earned the benefit of the doubt just quite yet. So given that Nemestikov is not on the top line, not on the top power play, it's reasonable to let him go, but keep him in mind as a streamer. He could still come in handy.
Yeah, though, of course, there are a bunch of Rangers, as usual, who might compete with him for who you might want on the Rangers. Maybe I'll get you to do a ranking at the end. I know you love that, Brian. Let's talk about probably the most valuable newcomer so far, which has been Ryan Spooner. We talked about him last week coming over from the Rick Nash trade, but we did not expect him to have 1 goal and 6 assists in his first 3 games as a Ranger. That's insane. He had no points in his 4th game yesterday, but he did have 4 shots on goal and 5 in the game before, so he's helping you in quite a few categories. He seems to really be clicking with Kevin Hayes, who has been red hot right along with him with 3 goals and 1 assist in his last 4 games. Are you seeing anything sustainable in the production of this line, of specifically Spooner and Hayes? Should we recommend that people take a shot on them if they're still available? And of course, Brian, I gotta ask, do you have a preference between the two, Hayes and Spooner? They're both looking good right now.
So while Spooner and Hayes have been playing together, well, Kevin Hayes has now scored 3 times on his last 6 shots, and Spooner has been the primary assist on 2 of those. So that helps, and it's good that he's been the primary, but of course Kevin Hayes should not necessarily score 3 times on his next 6 shots. I can tell you that in the early days of New York Ranger Ryan Spooner, he's on 2 extremes when playing with Kevin Hayes and Jesper Fast, and those are, one is extremely high expected goals for per 60 relative to his time in Boston, and the other is extremely terrible shot attempts for percentage relative to his time in Boston. Of course, we're looking at a super small sample size, so extremes aren't surprising. And the story we're seeing these extremes tell is that the Fast, Hayes, Spooner line is allowed to continue being filled in on defense. And the trade-off is that they're creating a lot of offensive opportunities. So if they continue to be allowed to make that trade-off, then sure, either player on that line, Spooner, Hayes, maybe Jesper Fast as well, could be a handy add. If you're asking me who I like better, I'm probably going to go, it's even. It's even. I want to say Kevin Hayes just because I like him more as a player, but there's no real reason to think he's going to do any better or worse than Spooner based on what we've seen so far.
Yeah, maybe when you have decisions like this, you can always go by who's more likely to be taken by other people. Like I think Spooner right now is the more popular ad. I don't know. Anyway, like you say, it's going to be hard to say, and they're playing together. We'll compare them to some other guys as we keep going. Quick Chris Kreider update. We talked about his return last week, and he has 3 points last week, and now he has points in 3 straight games after going pointless in his first 2 after coming back from injury. I assume Chris Kreider is the best of these other guys that we've discussed. Like, you know, we talked about Spooner and Hayes and Nemestikov, whatever. Like, Kreider's number 1, right?
Kreider is number 1. He and Buchnevich are probably still your next best options after Mika Zibanejad in Rangers forwards and in Rangers defensemen and maybe even in Rangers goalies. So just in Rangers period, one guy who is not who has not yet been mentioned in this conversation is Matt Zuccarello. Not even mentioned, but he's still on pace for 55 points this season, so he should be in that conversation. I would still rather own him over Spooner and Hayes.
Yeah, I guess I didn't bring up Zuccarello just because I feel like he's owned in pretty much all leagues. Like I've seen Chris Kreider dropped in a lot of leagues because he was injured, and then even people who added him might have dropped him quickly because he was pointless in those first 2 games. Zuccarello's never been available, at least in any of my leagues. That's why I didn't ask about him. Finally, Brian, I got to ask you, who's John Gilmore? Before the trade deadline, we had been looking at Brady Shea as the top power play quarterback on the Rangers with McDonough injured, but clearly that didn't work out for Shea. He played his first For Shea, he hasn't even been on either of the power play units. It's been Anthony D'Angelo on the second power play unit, and this guy, John Gilmore, on the top unit. So who is this guy? I can tell you from what I've seen, he played his first game for the Rangers this year on February 9th, was doing not much of anything for a while, though actually his shots on goal have been good all the way through if you look at his game logs. But now John Gilmore has 1 goal and 1 assist in his last 3 games, neither on the power play. So you'd think he'll even have some power play points to come soon since he's on that top unit with some pretty good players. I should point out that the Rangers have been running a pretty even split with their units, so maybe D'Angelo could be worth a look as well. Like they've been pretty much going 50-50 in terms of how much ice time each power play unit gets. But yeah, Brian, who is John Gilmore? What's your take on the Rangers' D situation overall? Brady Shea, clear snoozer, right?
Looking that way, for sure. I don't know that it's impossible for him to end up in a relevant position again before the season's out, but as you said, right now that power play time is being split in New York between John Gilmore and Anthony D'Angelo. As for who John Gilmore is, he stands 5'11", 180 pounds, so a little small. Montreal native. He was a 7th round pick of Calgary back in 2013. In his second pro season last year, he started with Hartford. He didn't do a whole lot. He led like the team in rookie scoring, but that was a really small order to be able to fill. He was also second in defensive shots on goal on the team. He had 110 shots over the course of the year, which I guess it's okay. I think that says more about the rest of the team not taking a lot of shots from the blue line than it does about him taking a lot. This year, John Gilmore is the 4th leading scorer for AHL Hartford in his second pro season with 6 goals, 20 assists, and 26 points in 44 games. Not a bad stat line. The thing is that he honestly does not have much of a pedigree as a scorer or really anyone who could stick in the NHL. Dobber Prospects had John Gilmore ranked as a D+ fantasy prospect, which is honestly pretty bleak. There aren't a lot of guys we talk about on the show who are like below a B-. So John Gilmore is a standout in how low his fantasy outlook was when it was most recently updated. Maybe what we're seeing now for Gilmore is a tryout for next year. If I was choosing one Rangers defenseman to own, though, it would not be him. I would prefer Anthony D'Angelo. I don't think John Gilmore has a ton of relevance, and personally, I'd rather see Brady Shea playing that role.
Well, I'll disagree. If you look at John Gilmore's shots, I like that. So I would grab him right now. I don't know how long it'll last, but for now, if you want a Ranger defenseman, give me the one on the top power play with Zibanejad and Buchnevich and company. Okay, let's go over to Tampa now. Brian's probably right, by the way. He usually is. Anyway, okay, over to Tampa now. They get Ryan McDonagh. He hasn't played yet, but word is he will get into the lineup on Tuesday versus Florida. We already called Sergachev a snoozer before, but now he's like Rip Van Wick. I couldn't do it.
Oh, no.
Let's try again. Now, he's Rip Van Winkle, right? He's doing nothing, and he's probably going to get bumped from the second power play unit. I assume that McDonagh's got to be on the second unit at worst. Sergachev's not going to get anything, and he's already doing nothing. McDonagh, by the way, he's been having a really solid season for the Rangers. He has 26 points in 49 games. That's a 44-point pace. That's really classic Ryan McDonagh when he's not the top power play defenseman. What do you think happens now that he's in Tampa? Do you see him being better or worse than like a 45-point pace guy? I'm having trouble figuring this one out since he's on a higher scoring team, so he should be on the ice for more even strength goals, but he's clearly behind Hedman in the depth chart. Curious to know, what do you think about McDonagh moving forward? Let me know. Let me know.
Of course I'll let you know. You don't need to specify. Is this the end of an email where you're asking me to let you know whenever I have a chance? Ryan McDonagh.
Wait, sorry. I was interrupting too much. Sorry. Let me just do it again. You'll have to do the whole rant again. Sorry. Let me know.
What do you mean, let me know? You don't need to add that at the end of a question. This isn't like an email where you're asking me to let me know when you have a chance. Thanks, Elon. I would love to let you know once Tampa lets us know, once McDonagh lets them know that he's ready to play, or I guess the team doctors. Everybody needs to be let know what exactly McDonagh is going to do as a member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. Not sure yet. He hasn't played. The thing about him is he's a lefty, but he can play both sides, so he can shift around in the lineup where he's needed in Tampa. McDonagh played on the right side a lot this year while paired with other now former New York Ranger left-handed defenseman Nick Holden. So maybe McDonagh plays with his former Rangers partner in Dan Girardi, or maybe he plays on Sergachev's right side on the second pairing. One thing I haven't seen speculated is that McDonagh plays with Hedman. I think the idea is to have McDonagh create another pair in addition to Hedman's pair that can shut down and threaten offensively. It can be a really solid tandem. So they have two pairs that they can really trust when one of them is on the ice. And obviously, if they put Strawman on the other, maybe they can trust that one too. As for what McDonagh's fantasy value is because of all this, it's probably down a little bit, but maybe he can stay reasonably relevant. Like, think of Anton Strawman. Even when Victor Hedman was doing his thing in Tampa, Victor Strawman could still get like 40 points when he was doing well. So maybe McDonagh can manage the same. That's what I'm hoping. I know he's probably going. I'm hoping. I expect to at least eat a fair amount of minutes, which should give him opportunities to keep blocking a couple shots, taking a couple shots, and hopefully getting in on a couple of those amazing Tampa goals that keep getting scored this year.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like if he got a 45-point pace on the Rangers as a second power play defenseman and second guy behind Shattenkirk, why can't he at least do the same on Tampa or maybe a little better? I don't know. Like around 45-point pace seems good to me. We'll have to wait and see, like you say, and see how he's deployed. By the way, Brian, side note, Victor Hedman, he had 2 goals and 2 assists versus Philly yesterday. That brings him up to 49 points in 61 games on the year. That's a 66-point pace. Not too far from his 72 last year. At the beginning of the year, we were talking about how Hedman was way, way behind, slowly creeping back. Obviously, a 4-point game will help with that.
For sure. And I'm glad you brought that up, Elon, because nobody was facing more skepticism coming into this season about repeating an amazing year he had last year than Victor Hedman. And here we are, and it's been done so quietly. No one's even noticed. Of course, it helps that the team in front of him is clicking, but he is a part of this. So good on you, Victor Hedman, for being able to do the nearly impossible task of following up on a 72-point career year.
Yeah, he is good. I feel like, yeah, when people talk about who's the top fantasy defenseman out there, people rarely say Hedman, but he should definitely be at least in the conversation. So, Brian, up front for Tampa, Nikita Kucherov missed a couple of games, but he was back yesterday, and he was on a line with Stamkos and Killorn. So that sounds like obviously a great spot for Killorn if he can hold it. Though I've got to say I'm not super confident in that happening, as things have been shuffling around a lot lately. Killorn was bumped from the top power play recently, but an interesting option with Nemesnikov gone. JT Miller has looked great. He's slotted right into the second line with Yanni Gourde and Braden Point, so good spot for him. And JT Miller, he had 2 assists versus Dallas on Thursday, then he had a goal yesterday. Welcome to Tampa Bay, JT Miller. So, Brian, I'm curious, how are you liking JT Miller moving forward as a new Ranger of the Tampa Bay Lightning? For the last time, can I ask you to compare him to some Rangers forwards in Spooner, Nemesnikov, and Kevin Hayes?
As a new Ranger of the Tampa Bay Lightning. So I was too focused on that to catch the list of names, but I think I'll remember who you want me to compare them to. But first, JT Miller playing with Gordon Point, like you said. I like anyone playing with Yanni Gourde and Braden Point. So I like JT Miller. Another thing that's changed for him since moving to the Lightning is that he's playing almost 2 minutes more per night as a member of the Lightning than he was as a Ranger. So I like him quite a bit. We've also talked about how he seems to be a legitimately talented guy in his own right too, regardless of who he's playing with, where he plays, how much he plays. So yeah, I prefer JT Miller to Nemesnikov, to Spooner, to Hayes, to any of the guys that you just named, especially any New York Ranger who's not on the top power play.
Oh, wow. Okay, so go out and grab JT Miller if you can. And since we're on Tampa, one last thing, then we'll get past the first trade. Potential snoozer alert for Tyler Johnson. He's pointless in 3 games. He only has 3 points in his last 11 games, and he played yesterday with Corey Conacher and Adam Ernie. So not a good spot for him. Of course, like I said, things get shaken up all the time in Tampa, but watch out for Tyler Johnson. If you still have him, there might be better options available for you. Brian, you probably want to comment on that, right? As a Tyler Johnson owner?
Yeah, me and anyone else who owned him. Tyler Johnson helped his owners get to where they are at this point in their fantasy seasons, but there's no time for sentimentality. We're here in the playoffs. He hasn't been doing anything consistently for a while, so it's time to start looking and probably finding another option for anyone who still owns Tyler Johnson at this point.
Okay, so that's one trade in the books. How about next? Let's look at a trade. Probably the trade that surprised me the most on Monday, which is when the St. Louis Blues sent Paul Stastny to Winnipeg for picks and a prospect. I didn't even know Stastny was on the block. Off he went. I don't even get what St. Louis is doing. Aren't they in the playoff race? I guess not. Anyways, huge opportunity for Paul Stastny, who not only took Brian Little's job as the line 2 centerman of Ehlers and Laine, but he also bumped Kyle Connor from the top power play unit in his first game with Nashville. Anyways, it went really well. Like I said, he was in that spot and he scored a goal. He had a power play assist. Then things started to get shaken up in his next game on the team, and he didn't get any points. And Winnipeg played again today. They're actually still going. They're winning 2-1 against Carolina. So let me check real-time these lines. Yeah, so he's been still playing with Laine and Ehlers, and on the top power play, yeah, he's there with Wheeler and Scheifele and Laine in Buffalo. So a really great spot for Paul Stastny, better than even his spot in St. Louis in the best of times, maybe, when he was playing with Tarasenko, because these are all really great players that he's playing with. Curious to know, Brian, what do you think about Stastny moving forward? He has 42 points in 65 games so far, which is a 53-point pace. Do you think he could do better while he's on this great line in Winnipeg, better than a 53-point guy, or do you expect him to stay pretty much the same?
Early returns are showing that the line of Paul Stastny, Nick Ehlers, and Patrick Laine just off the charts. Is like right off the charts, crushing it in shot attempts in very limited time together. They're averaging 90 shot attempts per 60 minutes and 50 shots on goal per 60 minutes, which are good numbers. They're also insane numbers, but just to compare. Like, these are small sample, but in a bigger sample for Stastny in St. Louis, he wasn't putting up 90 shot attempts, 4 per 60. With Sabatka and Tank or Steen, he's putting up 60 shot attempts, 4 per 60 minutes, and 30 shots, 4 per 60 minutes instead of 50 shots, 4 per 60 minutes. I only mention those numbers to illustrate how wild these are. But again, it's like the start of the season for this sort of thing, when we're like, okay, we're not going to get caught up in any ridiculous number. But of course, it's fun to just think that there's some real spark and promise there. I'm not going to promise that the Stastny line, A, sticks together, or B, that this offensive dominance is guaranteed to continue. Of course, getting points for them has been helped along by shooting 20% when all are on the ice together at even strength. But it's a very good place for Paul Stastny to be, and one where I'm less paranoid of him being shuffled around the way he was in St. Louis. Just based on that and how really fantastic Stastny's 2 new line mates are, not to mention his own skill level, I think Stastny's pace can increase from here on out, even as that line shooting percentage regresses. Jets are a big scoring team, and I'm looking forward to seeing Paul Stastny get in on that.
Yeah, I agree. Definitely grab Paul Stastny if he is available. I'm not sure compared to other guys we've talked about, but I'm pretty sure of everyone we've discussed, you want Stastny the most. I think. I'd have to think back and confirm. And Kyle Connor, watch out, bumped from the top power play. Not great for him. Still on a good line, though. Okay, and then let's look over in St. Louis. The trade is obviously not a great omen for things to come for them. Like, already Allen and Hutton have been bad lately, and I imagine wins will be even harder to come by, even if you happen to pick the right goalie for the given week or game that's going to play. Then we have Schwartz and Tarasenko, who've both been good. That's pretty much it, actually, in terms of their forwards. So Schwartz and Tarasenko doing fine in yesterday's game versus Dallas, though they were running with Schenn, Schwartz, and Yaskin, and then Barbashev, Steen, and Tarasenko. And like I said, pretty much the only guys you want to be playing with right now are Schwartz and Tarasenko. So what do you think about these periphery guys like Barbashev or Yaskin? They're getting exposure to great players. Do you think they might be worth adding, or do you expect just like a lot of shakeups and not too many points regardless? Like, for what it's worth, Barbashev, he scored a goal yesterday, only took 1 shot, but playing with Tarasenko is good, and Alex Steen, but I don't know, it's hard to be too excited about St. Louis players right now.
It is, and you look at someone who has been exposed to good players all year long in St. Louis. For example, Vladimir Sabatka spent most of his year with Paul Stastny and then either Alex Steen or Vladimir Tarasenko as the third piece of that line, and all Sabatka has to show for that is a 30-point pace. So I'm not terribly into Barbashev or Yaskin, especially with the Blues only playing 2 games late in this upcoming week.
Yeah, well, for sure. If you are going to add a player that we recommend, you obviously have to look at the schedule. Don't add someone right now that you could easily just wait and add on Thursday if you need them, and you could stream someone else in advance. Great point, Brian. Okay, let's go to our next big trade, which was Evander Kane being sent to San Jose in exchange for Danny O'Regan and some picks. Kane's got to be one of the biggest beneficiaries of the deadline, right? Like, maybe Paul Stastny, but he was in an okay spot. But Evander Kane, like, when Eichel got injured, we thought the one bright spot, the only player who maybe benefited, would be Evander Kane getting on the top power play. But even that didn't last. Evan Rodriguez took Eichel's spot, and Evander Kane got nothing. Now Kane finally gets the primo spot that I'm sure he's wanted for a long time. He's on the Sharks' top line with Pavelski and Donskoy, and on the top power play with Couture, Hurdle, Pavelski, and Burns. We all know the story with Evander Kane at this point, right? Like, he has huge potential, and he's been disappointing for the most part, but he did have a monster start to this season before going ice cold. He did, though, have goals in each of his last 2 games in Buffalo, with a very convenient surge in ice time for those games before the trade deadline. And so far in San Jose, he put up 2 assists versus Edmonton, and then 1 assist versus Chicago, 2 shots in each of those games. I'd imagine Kane's not available in any leagues, but if he is, he's an easy ad, right? Like, not even much to discuss here. I know I've been throwing this out there now about easy ads, but like Paul Stastny, Evander Kane, they're obvious, and they're looking really good right now.
For sure. Evander Kane is likely, as you said, one of the bigger beneficiaries. Even weren't we supposed to change the way we use that word? No, instead of benefactor.
Yeah, don't worry, I got this.
Okay, good. The hugest beneficiary, I'm just going for it. On trade deadline day, Kane was being buried on Buffalo in a bad way. So he gets new life with San Jose now, with a team who has a fresh reserve of patience to offer him. By the way, while we're talking about San Jose, Elon, did we talk about Kevin LeBlanc on just the Patron cast, or was it the show?
We talked about it on the Patron cast, and we also, I corrected you and said it's Kevin LeBanc. We've been corrected too many times for us to keep making this mistake, Brian.
Well, you know, after enough times, I can't remember which is the right version and which is the wrong version that I'm being corrected on. Okay, LeBanc, really blew his opportunity. He did not take it to the bank. That should be an easy way to help me remember it. Just 4 points in his last 14 games. 32 shots is okay, but LeBanc's time on ice sunk back down beneath the 15-minute mark recently. He was not able to keep up his initial momentum from the first few games after Thornton's injury, where he did have a few points. So if you still have him on your roster, you probably shouldn't. It was a blown opportunity for Kevin LeBlanc with Thornton out.
No!
And Evander Kane's in the picture.
Was that a joke?
Yes.
Okay, good. People don't like that, Brian. But anyways, yeah. LeBlanc, total snoozer. Get him off your team faster than you got Sergachev off of your team when I told you that he was Rip Van Winkle earlier. Thomas Hertl, by the way, is in a really nice spot on the top power play and on line 2 with Couture and Bodker. That top power play hopefully is improved now with Evander Kane. Hertl only has 1 assist in 5 games since returning from injury, and San Jose doesn't play until Thursday of this week. So I feel like he could be a really nice, sneaky late season ad. Like maybe people have dropped Hertl. They're tired of him now, especially with a few games off. No one's going to want him right now. He might get dropped. You can grab him. Brian, he reminds me, remember last year, Marcus Johansson on Washington in our joint league? Like he was dropped by the team that we ended up playing in the finals. And he was dropped, I think, because of a bad schedule. He had a few cold games, and he was on the top power play on the Capitals. And he was like our MVP. And I don't know, I get this hunch that Hertl's going to be that guy for someone this year. So like, maybe don't add him now. Wait for him to get a goal or something. But keep your eye on him. He's on the top power play. He's on a good line with Couture. I don't know. Just normally we don't bring up players who are slumping, but I think he's slumping but has something to offer. But he might not even be available, though. One guy who probably is available, though, is Joonas Donskoi, who has 3 assists in 2 games since Evander Kane came over. And like I told you, he's the one playing with Kane and Joe Pavelski on the top line. We always used to recommend the guy playing with the Joes. It was a common thing on Keeping Karlsson to be like, oh, this guy's playing with Pavelski and Thornton. You got to grab him. How do we feel about a guy playing with a Joe and an Evander?
Pretty good. I wouldn't expect any more from Donskoi with Joe and Evander versus Joe times 2. So that means from Donskoi you can expect streaky, good if you can catch him at the right time, but no sure thing. Just like Tomas Hertl, who, Elon, like you mentioned, he is not doing anything right now. Hertl, over the last however many seasons, over the course of his career, since that 4-goal game or whatever, consistently a threat to be relevant, but also consistently a disappointment. For Hertl, it's not like 1 point in 5 games is so rare from him this year. He has struggled to a 45-point full season pace so far, but he has the deployment and he's done it before. So if you're a Hertl optimist, this is a good time to add him. A couple positive signs for Hertl optimists out there. One, his on-ice shooting percentage is not very good so far, though this is for the 2nd straight year, although I don't think that's a pattern. So that could rise and you could get more points that way. And also Hertl's IPP has been down around 50% instead of the mid-60s from the last couple of years. So maybe the glass is half full for Tomas Hertl.
Okay, and Donskoi, did you say anything about him?
I definitely did. You need to get out of the chat, Elon, and get into this show.
Sorry, it's so fun. We got a live chat room here talking with the guys. Okay, just give me a quick yes or no on Donskoi. Oh yeah, you said that it's good on the Joes. Okay, fine. Take a look. He's looking good and in a good spot. Who knows? Let's now talk about Buffalo. And they already, they're so thin right now with Eichel injured. Now Evander Kane is gone. I never thought I'd say this, but now they're being hurt because Evan Rodriguez is day-to-day with an upper body injury. So their practice lines today were O'Reilly, Gergensons, and Reinhart. Then Okposo with Josephson and Nolan, which is being listed as the 4th lines. I don't know if Okposo's on line 4. Who even knows? The rest of the lines are all nobodies. Like, trust me. But I mean, the thing is, Buffalo has a good schedule next week. They have Monday and Wednesday games. So you could grab a Buffalo player early, technically, and get 2 games out of them on off days, and then decide what to do with the player after that. But I wonder, at this point, is it really worth streaming anyone or owning anyone on Buffalo aside from Ryan O'Reilly or Rasmus Ristolainen? Like I said, Okposo, he's cold right now, and he's on a terrible line. There's Sam Reinhart. I guess he's the best option. He has 5 points in his last 6 games and decent shots on goal. Like, what do you think about Reinhart, Brian? Like, do you think he can keep this run going rest of season? Like, last year, I remember I was so into him. People ended up making fun of me, but like he started the year and Eichel was injured, and I thought I'm going to hold on to Reinhart just because once Eichel comes back, then finally Reinhart is going to be good. And then Eichel did come back and Reinhart did better, but it wasn't so great. Now Eichel's injured and Reinhart's still doing well. So I don't know what to do with him. I'm not sure if people should add him or not. My gut says no, but obviously he's on a hot run. So maybe I would look dumb by saying no, and then he just continues to do well.
My gut also says do not add Sam Reinhart, but that's what my gut has said for like the last 5 weeks when he's been staring me in the face in a couple leagues that have been shallow enough for him to remain a free agent. But had I not listened to my gut and just added him, he'd have already scored so many points for me. He's been a point per game player, Sam Reinhart, over the last 6 weeks. 8 goals, 13 assists, 21 points with 7 power play points, 58 shots on goal. Those are some legitimately high-end numbers, 21 points in 21 games, especially with those power play points and shots on goal coming at a nice rate too. Even though I remain unconvinced that Sam Reinhart or any Buffalo Sabre can keep up a point per game pace for very long. This is how I felt since late January. So at this point, he's forced my hand, especially with Buffalo's good schedule this week. You can add him, see what he can do for your team, and then blame yourself for being the jinx that stops his run the moment you do get him on your roster.
Right, yeah, that's a good way to look at it. By the way, Brian, fun fact, remember how I mentioned that Danny O'Regan came back in this trade for Evander Kane? Turns out that Eichel, O'Regan, and Evan Rodriguez all played on the same line at some point for Boston University. So I don't know, maybe a potential reunion when it will happen next year, which would obviously be great for O'Regan and Rodriguez if they end up on a line with Eichel next year. Something to think about over the summer as you're trying to decide what to do when you're drafting your last pick at the end of the draft, or, you know, last minute free agent ads. And Brian, very quickly on Buffalo, Chad Johnson has been great lately. He has 3 straight really strong starts, including a 2-1 overtime win over Tampa on Tuesday. He's already been announced to be getting the start versus Toronto tomorrow. Looks like he's potentially going to steal starts from Robin Lehner moving forward. Lehner has been not so good. So what do you think about Chad Johnson in leagues where people really value goalies, and getting a goalie who starts a lot is worth it? Do you think people should be rushing to add Chad Johnson? Seems like he might go 50-50 the rest of the way, though who knows how good he'll actually be with all of these injuries and already a shallow team and the fact that he's Chad Johnson.
Yeah, rushing to add Chad Johnson is generally not something anybody does, but it is worth noting, and I'm glad you brought it up, that Chad Johnson has started 3 of Buffalo's last 6 games, stopping 82 of 86 shots he's faced for a .954 save percentage, with games with 2 goals against, 1 goal against, and 1 goal against. So Chad Johnson sure could steal starts playing like that. So I think this really only has an impact on you if you already own Robin Lehner and you're counting on him for saves. It's best to take a peek around your free agent list and see if there's another option for you, because Chad Johnson could steal starts. If you don't have Chad Johnson and he's a free agent, I still would be pretty reluctant to add him to your team unless you're looking for saves and you know he's starting. He's still a good candidate to blow up your numbers.
Yeah, always risky, though. We've been saying that about Antti Niemi for the past couple of weeks, and he's been great. So who knows? Maybe right now is the time for the crappy goalies from last year to come back and do really well. By the way, if you want to go and see one of these goalies, Buffalo, actually, who we're talking about, it's really not too far from Toronto, and it's so hard and expensive to go to a Leafs game. Why not take a road trip to Buffalo? I don't know, if you live in Toronto, and if you want to get a ticket to a game, maybe consider using our sponsor for this week's episode, which are our friends over at SeatGeek. SeatGeek, man! Buying tickets can be complicated and confusing, but there's a better way to buy with SeatGeek. It's the smartest, easiest way to get tickets to every type of live event. Whether you're searching for a last-minute deal, planning a night out with friends, you need to find the perfect gift, SeatGeek helps you find the best seats at the best price, fully guaranteed. Right now, it's basically playoffs for a lot of teams. These games are so important. So you could go see a hockey game and see some real emotion, have real stakes on the line. Now's the time to go see a game. So why not check out SeatGeek? And you could even get a small discount on your first ticket purchase if you're a listener of the show. Why don't you tell our listeners about that, Brian?
Yeah, I don't even know. Is it a small discount? It could be a pretty big one depending on where you're buying tickets. Like in Arizona, this could be free for a pair. This could be good for a pair of tickets. Our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. All you need to do is download the SeatGeek app, enter the promo code KEEPING today. That's promo code KEEPING for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase.
Yeah, I guess it's a small discount if you're buying a Leafs ticket, and it might be a significant discount if you're buying a Buffalo Sabres ticket. Though Matt is saying in the chat room that Toronto plays Buffalo 6 times this month. So if you want to go see the Leafs, maybe you could do it in Buffalo for a little cheaper. I don't know. You'll have to check out the prices over on SeatGeek. But okay, Brian, let's move on to our next trade. Let's go to Vegas and talk about Thomas Tatar, who got sent to Vegas for 3 picks over the next few years. A lot of people really jumped on Tatar under the assumption that everything Vegas touches turns to gold. That's a quote that our patron Peter told us. And I mean, it's been true. All these players who we thought were nobodies have come to Vegas and done really well. Do we think the same thing will happen to Tatar? I believe he scored a goal today. Let me just remind myself, because I wrote our notes for the show before the game started against the Devils. But yeah, Tatar scored a power play goal assisted by Perron and Hunt. So yeah, who knows what he'll do on Vegas? Who knows what anyone's going to do on Vegas? Like, Tatar's been on a decent line with James Neal out. He's been playing with Hala and Perron. He had no points in his first 2 games, but he did have 6 shots. We'll have to see how things shake out once James Neal is healthy. I'm curious, right? So what do you think about Tatar for the rest of the season? He only has 28 points in 64 games so far. That's what he did on Detroit. But if he's on the second line in Vegas and getting power play time, it's a pretty nice landing spot on a high-scoring team. Like I said, it might be temporary, but curious to know, what do you think about Thomas Tatar moving forward? Were people right to jump on him in free agency? I'm sure they're happy if they did for his power play goal today.
A couple things offer Thomas Tatar a new luster, shininess that people might want to jump on in their fantasy leagues. One is that he's in Vegas. The other is that look at the price that Vegas paid. They paid a first rounder, a second rounder, and a third rounder. And that, to me, came as a bit of a surprise, given how Tatar is on a 35-point pace this year with no massive flags of unfortunate variance that's caused him to be so low, and also no recent history for Tatar of being better than a 45-point guy. But hey, Vegas is built on guys who'd been undervalued and underutilized by their former teams. So I'm keeping an open mind here that maybe he could do something on the second line. Is a good place to be, better than the third line, which is where I think he started as a Golden Knight, but I'm glad he's already working his way up into the top 6 there.
Yeah, but then, like I said, Neal is injured, so who knows if he'll be able to hold that spot. Really, it doesn't matter for Vegas. They don't even need any production from any line other than their first line, the way Karlsson, Marchessault, and Riley Smith have been going against me in my Couple matchup this week, by the way, which made it very stressful, but I think I'm going to pull through, so don't you worry about me, listeners. I'll still be here to whine about the Couple next week. But man, like William Karlsson, he has 5 goals and 3 assists in his last 5 games. Scores every game, basically. Actually, today, that line didn't score a goal, so I guess Vegas did need other help for today against New Jersey, and they got the win. But generally, it's been Karlsson, Marchessault, and Smith. So yeah, Karlsson's on fire. Marchessault continues to get points almost every game. He's currently, or at least going into today, he was on a 5-game point streak with 1 goal and 6 assists in that span. 65 points in 62 games now on the season. So we're very far into the year, and Marchessault is still on above an 80-point pace. Then we have Riley Smith, no slouch. He has 3 goals and 6 assists in his last 5 games, again, before today, and he has 60 points in 65 games on the year. It's just crazy. This line is so good. Brian, I don't even have any questions for you. I'm just going to think back to how I could have had all these guys for a song at the beginning of the season. I probably could have drafted Marchessault late in my drafts. I could have grabbed Riley Smith or William Karlsson as free agents for free, for nothing. And now I'm just going to cry silently thinking of that. I don't even have a question for you. Maybe let's just go to Detroit to talk about the impact of losing Tatar. But actually, there's really nothing new to talk about on Detroit. Detroit's so boring. So maybe we could just move on to the next trades.
Sure. I want to own this whole Vegas thing. Elon, you didn't add any of those top line guys in Vegas in your leagues. I didn't add any of those guys in my leagues. We didn't advise. Well, you might have like excitedly advised. And then I was like, no, like Vegas, we don't believe in them yet. We let you down. If you're listening to this podcast and you heeded our advice and you missed out on those 3 Vegas guys because we were so tepid towards them and took us so long to believe, we're sorry. We're sorry. We own that one.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm not sorry. We haven't discussed this, Brian. Don't apologize on my behalf.
Okay, I'm apologizing on my own behalf. If you listened to Elon, you would have added them plus 300 other people.
Yeah, you wouldn't have dropped any. Well, you would have dropped everyone who went cold for a few games, though I did say on this episode to hold on to Tomas Hertl, right? So I'm not only just always going with what's happened in the last week, right? Okay, so let's talk about a few minor trades. These are trades that I probably wouldn't have brought up, but then these players have done something and like forced my hand and made me talk about them. So Pat Maroon joined Grabner as a new acquisition on the Devils. Edmonton got a 3rd-round pick and a prospect for Maroon, which is pretty good. Maroon lands in a really plum spot on the top power play with Hall, Palmieri, Zajac, and Vatanen. He's been on line 4 at even strength, but if he's used as a power play specialist, he can have some value, I guess, like Sam Gagner from last year. Maroon had 2 assists in his debut on Thursday versus Florida. Do you hear my dog barking?
Yeah, just a little. Also, I had a Maroon take, but it's disappeared from the dog. Oh, no.
Well, you have time to think about it. Okay. So what did I say? 2 assists versus his game on versus Florida. Nothing on Friday versus Carolina, aside from 5 hits, of course, as Pat Maroon is wont to do. Today against Vegas, let's see what he did. An assist! Probably on the power play, I'm guessing. Let me scroll up here. Of course, power play assist on the power play goal by Sami Vatanen. So yeah, it's a really good spot for Maroon, especially if your league counts power play points, which it probably doesn't. If it doesn't, you get points on the power play. He's on a power play with Taylor Hall, who doesn't stop getting points. Like, by the way, Taylor Hall, like, he's now had points in 25 straight games for anyone counting. He's so good. He has 4 power play goals in his last 5 games and more power play points tonight. So yeah, that makes me really interested in Pat Maroon on that top power play unit, as well as anyone else on that unit. So like Sammy Vatanen, by the way, if he's still available in your league, you have to grab him. We've already said that, but just a reminder. Brian, what do you think about Pat Maroon?
Good for him. He gets to be on the top power play, which is really important. Also in New Jersey, Kyle Palmieri just chugging along as well. Suddenly there are, well, I wouldn't say 3 Devils automatically forwards to be worth owning. I was going to lump Maroon in with Hall and Palmieri, but maybe he gets there.
I mean, you know, with Pat Maroon, it's the same as on Edmonton, probably. Who knows how long he'll stay on that top power play? Like, he's there for now, but he seems like the type of guy that's going to get cycled. But for a spot start for like daily fantasy on FanDuel, for example, grab Pat Maroon for cheap, and you might get a power play point out of him. Brian, speaking of the Devils, they also got some nice news with the return of Corey Schneider, though he didn't have the best return in a 3-2 loss to Florida on Thursday. He stopped 26 of 29. Then, like I said, another loss today versus Vegas, and he only stopped 24 of 27. So not a great return for Corey Schneider so far, but still I'd imagine New Jersey's going to lean on him for their playoff push, and like Keith Kincaid goes back to fantasy irrelevance. Like, tell me if you disagree with me here, but I feel like anyone who's holding Keith Kincaid can drop him now. Schneider, going into today, had a .913 save percentage on the season so far. Curious to know, Brian, let's bet on it, or if you had to bet on it, would you take the over or under where he's going to end? Is he going to be above .913 or below .913?
I'm going to go higher than .913 the rest of the way for Corey Schneider. Schneider has actually posted pretty healthy goals saved above average numbers. He's well placed in the top half of goalies in that stat this year. And New Jersey seems to be suppressing shots more effectively in the second half than they were in the first. So I guess I still have faith that Schneider can play better than an average goalie and get a little more support from the team in front of him than he was getting earlier in the year. That said, if you want to make a bet about it, I am not willing to bet very much at all on him going higher. It could be 50-50. I'm going to take the 51% chance, though, in my mind.
Oh, I would take that bet. I'm going to guess lower. I feel like Schneider, he's just like not that great anymore. Like, it all depends. Like, he's going to go on a run one way or the other. He's going to go on a hot streak or he's going to go on a cold streak, and we'll see. New Jersey really needs him. Taylor Hall's doing his best, trying to get, like, he's giving a point or two every game. The rest of the team not doing too much. Corey Schneider's really going to have to stand on his head, I think, for the Devils to make it into the playoffs. Though actually I haven't looked at the standings. I assume that's the case. I guess I do have a computer in front of me. You know how close the Devils are?
Not offhand.
Okay, let me check here. Standings. Wild card standings. Oh, they're in the wild. Okay, let me just... And okay, since I do have a computer in front of me, I just checked, and New Jersey is currently in a wildcard spot, the top wildcard spot. They have 74 points. Carolina is behind them. So Florida's behind them with 70, and then Carolina's just outside the playoffs right now with 69, along with Columbus. So it's going to be a bit of a tight race. New Jersey looking okay right now. Anyways, my opinion stands. I'm not sure about Corey Schneider, but if you have him on your team, you got to roll with him and just hope that Taylor Hall and the rest of the Devils will help get him enough goals to try for wins, and then it'll be up to Schneider to stop the pucks. We had a question here in the chat room from Matt asking if he should drop Werenski for Vatanen, and I was thinking, like, yeah, I think so. Brian, we've talked about Werenski before as a bit of a snoozer now that he's off the top power play. He actually has points in each of his last couple of games. And then Matt said, or Schultz, and it's like, yeah, for sure. Drop Schultz for Vatanen. I'd probably drop both of them for Vatanen. I really like Vatanen on that top power play on the Devils. Okay, let's go to the Edmonton Oilers side of losing Pat Maroon. What do you think?
Let's do it.
Okay, so they lose Maroon, but they gain Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who finally returned from his rib injury yesterday versus the Rangers. He had a great return. He scored a goal, took 4 shots. I'll tell you the Oilers' lines that they had yesterday, but they're probably going to change. So take this with a grain of salt. But they were rolling with McDavid, Draisaitl, and Lucic, then RNH with Camilleri and Pontus Aberg, who was acquired from Nashville in a deal involving Mark Letestu, and maybe we'll get to him a little later. Then Ryan Strome was with Slepyshev and Puljujarvi, and the top power play was Draisaitl, Lucic, McDavid, Strome, and Klefbom. So no Nuge on the top power play. He was there for a bit before his injury, but still, Brian, so if Nugent-Hopkins was dropped during his injury, would you be looking to add him now? He's up to 32 points in 47 games on the year, which is a 56-point pace, which is really good. Not a bad FA pickup for your playoff run. If you think he can keep that up, what do you think? Can he do it?
I'm not so sure that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can keep him up. that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins can keep it up. As much as I love the guy, there are a few reasons to think that he may not come back as strong as he was when he was playing pre-injury. The first is that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins was shooting 17% pre-injury, which probably gave him about 6 more goals than he'd have had he shot more in line with his usual career numbers. The second reason is that Ryan Nugent-Hopkins' IPP is sky high, up in the low 80s, which is what we see from elite offensive producers, but we've never seen that from RNH before. He's lived more in like the 60 to 70% territory. And finally, the other reason that I'm not counting on Ryan Nugent-Hopkins to continue his pre-injury production is that I'd rather see him with guys like Lucic, Maroon, even maybe Jesse Puljujarvi than I would Michael Camilleri and Pontus Åberg. Maybe Camilleri, Nugent-Hopkins, and Åberg find some wonderful chemistry, but I'm not holding my breath. Anyone who's hoping, by the way, that he doesn't spend a lot of time on that line and that it's just temporary and time with Draisaitl or McDavid could be in Nugent-Hopkins' future, that would be nice, but neither of those guys, neither Draisaitl or McDavid, are amongst RNH's 10 most common line mates this year. In fact, no Oilers regular has spent less time with McDavid than Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. So short answer, am I interested in him? No. I'm not really looking to add him now, though I still will keep my eye on him because he's a pretty good player given the opportunity. I'm just not sure what kind of opportunity that line presents for him.
Well, Brian, if you're saying that he wasn't playing, I'm going to do some math in my head here, okay? Let me know if this logic is correct. So don't look at the chat room. This is a new thing. Okay, so if you're saying that Nugent-Hopkins has had a really high IPP this year, which means he's been in on almost all the goals that have been scored while he's been on the ice, and you're saying that might be a bit of an indication that he's had some good luck. But you're also saying that he hasn't been playing very much with McDavid and Draisaitl, then doesn't it kind of make sense that, like, if he's playing with nobodies, of course he's going to be the one driving the offense and making goals happen? If a goal is scored on the ice, if it wasn't him, who else would it have been that did all the work?
Okay, I see your point. Just means that he is still going to have to do a lot of that work. And it also does not excuse the shooting percentage issue that I mentioned. He has 17 goals, which make up more than half of his 32 points. Right now, you take away 6 goals. Like if you regress him back to his normal shooting percentage, he would have 21 points and 47 games. And Elon, do you know what that puts him at on a full season 82 game pace?
I don't know, half a point per game.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay. I actually still agree with your conclusion. I'm just going to say that I think the IPP part of it makes sense. I'm not concerned about that high IPP. I'd almost be concerned if he didn't have a high IPP playing on like the third line. But yeah, if he's playing with bad line mates and he has a high shooting percentage, hard to be too excited. Though if he's available in free agency, it's hard not to jump on a guy who's currently on a 56-point pace. Brian, and also, how about Ryan Strome? So curious to know now what you think about Nugent-Hopkins versus a guy like Ryan Strome, who has 5 goals and 3 assists in his last 8 games, point per game over the last couple of weeks. Is Ryan Strome finally breaking out? We thought he would do it like a couple years ago. We thought he was good. Then we thought it was ridiculous how he was traded for Eberle, but Eberle's been kind of slow lately, and Ryan Strome doing great. Of course, I'm being somewhat facetious. It's a very small sample size, but also only one of these points, of these 8 points in the last 8 games, have been on the power play, and he's been on the top power play, which is, of course, a very great spot to be on the Oilers, so maybe he'd even have an extra power play point or 2 if bounces went his way. What do you think about him moving forward? Worth an ad, or still someone that you wouldn't be interested in if you saw him in your free agency?
Still someone I'm not terribly interested in. Ryan Strome is putting in all these goals just in time to up his contract demands this summer. That's the very cynical take. It's not quite mine. I'm sure he just wants to score goals. But his 5 goals have come on 10 shots. So yeah, I'm not buying in heavily on Ryan Strome. He's playing with Puljujarvi and Slepyshev, who both, like, I don't know, I have an open mind about what they're capable of, but as a trio, I'm just not sure which guy there is going to be the one to really bring them forward and help create scoring opportunities on a regular basis.
Okay, so it sounds like overall you're not too high on most Oilers players. How about Lucic? He's doing nothing, but he's playing with McDavid and Draisaitl. That's good, right?
Good that he's doing nothing, or good that he's playing with those guys?
Like, it's good that he's playing with those guys. He's on the top power play. Is he like a Elon version of Tomas Hertl? Like, he's not doing anything, but I'm expecting him to do well. I don't even know if I'm expecting Lucic to do well, because it's been so long that he's been playing with these good players and he's not doing anything. But it's like such a good spot. Can you get better line mates than McDavid and Draisaitl?
Very much a Donskoy or Hertl situation, except Lucic has a bit more of a history of actually producing when you expect him to. So let's hope that he's just on an insanely cold run and that he is not just finished as an NHL scorer, which would be pretty unlikely.
That would also be pretty sad for the Oilers, who still, I think, have him under contract for like 7 more years or whatever it is for big money. Okay, so I mentioned that Pontus Aberg is now on Edmonton, I think. So he came from Nashville, I guess. And Nashville, so some changes there. They got Ryan Hartman from the Blackhawks for some picks and prospect, and he's actually looked good. He has 2 points in 3 games, at least before today. I think that Nashville did play today, and who am I talking about? Ryan Hartman? I'm even trying to keep track of all these nobody players who I have to bring up just because they've gotten points after being traded. And he's like, are you interested in Ryan Hartman? So he had no points today. He also had no points in the game against Vancouver. I'm just going to shut this down. Probably not, right? Like, he was playing with Fiala and Turris today because Craig Smith missed the game and we don't know why yet. So that's something to keep your eye on because Craig Smith has been really hot lately. Also on Nashville, Mike Fisher is finally back. We heard that he was going to re-sign with the team, cancel his retirement, and he had a goal in his first game. But then he's on the 4th line and he didn't play today. So we're gonna have to wait till the next game to see what he can do next. There was some look of potentially a line shakeup, but today they went back with Forsberg, Johansson, and Arvidsson in the game against Colorado, which they won in overtime. So at this point, I don't know. What can I even ask you about? Oh, also Roman Josi is day-to-day. So that's something to be concerned about. Everything's all up in the air with Nashville. They had a weird game today with all these players not playing. There's Calle Yarncroc, by the way, who has a 5-game point streak, or at least he did going into today's game. I'd have to check and see how he did. Man, Brian, if only there was a way that we can like stop time and then prep the show and then not have anything happen until we talk about it. What did Calle Yarncroc do today? Nothing, no points, but he was on a good streak. So does that mean that streak was unsustainable? Who do you like on Nashville? I don't even know. Do you have any takes about what's going on in Nashville with Hartman in and Aberg out and Fisher in and Roman Josi injured and Yarncroc on a hot streak?
Very little to add to what you said, which you essentially just named a bunch of Predators. Maybe we can have a new segment where we pick one team and just name a bunch of players on them. Ryan Hartman, like if you want me to have a take on him, I like that he's already been at or above the 15-minute mark for ice time twice in his 3 games as a Predator, given that had been a rarity for Hartman in Chicago pretty much since October after the initial excitement of him playing with Kane or Taves in the top 6 wore off. Yarncroc seems to be clicking pretty well with Hartnell and Bonino. Nice run he was on. I don't think he'll continue scoring at that clip, but it's nice to see some production from him every so often. Fisher, I have the least interest in out of those 3.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, here's one guy we could all agree on is worth talking about in Nashville, and that's Ryan Ellis. Such a good under-the-radar pick for anyone who drafted him and stashed him in IR when the announcement came that he was going to be out until January. He's just been amazing. Another great game today. He had a goal and 2 assists. Before that, he had 17 points in 26 games, so I guess that makes it 20 points in 27 games, over 55-point pace. He's like really good. Ryan Ellis is the real deal.
Yeah, he's been outstanding, and I can't say that there are any like huge markers of unsustainability either. It's still more reasonable. Like if you own him, this is not the new normal necessarily. We're not about to see him become a 50+ point guy. Mid-40s is more reasonable, but we can at least feel comfortable that he's going to hit that mark. He is looking gangbusters since he returned from injury. Can you look gangbusters, or do you be gangbusters?
He is gangbusters.
Is gangbusters.
I don't know.
So that is B. Do you be?
Okay, well, listeners, tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson and let us know how you use the word gangbusters in your everyday speech. And Brian, I'm going to give you another team where I'm going to just name a bunch of players now because I want to talk about the Boston Bruins. So first of all, this first thing, it's not a trade, but Brian Gionta signed with the team after captaining Team USA in the Winter Olympics. I wasn't even planning to bring this up when I saw the news. I was like, whatever, this is a minor thing. But Gionta has 3 assists in 2 games so far on the team. So now we have to talk about him. He's taken Riley Nash's spot on the Heinen and Backus line, with Nash going to line 1 to take Bergeron's spot, who is injured. So yeah, that's probably the bigger news that I should have led off this Boston talk with. And now that they got Brian Gionta, is that Patrice Bergeron is out with here it is. With fractured right foot. He's going to be out for at least 2 weeks and maybe longer. So that's really tough news for Bergeron owners right before the fantasy playoffs. But of course, now we get to take a look at some new line combinations and potentially some new players with fantasy value. They were rolling with Marchand, Riley Nash, and Pasternak, and then Krejci with Rick Nash and DeBrusk, and then Backus with Gionta and Heinen. And the top power play was Backes, Marchand, Rick Nash, Pasternak, and Torrey Krug. I'm referring to yesterday's game versus Montreal. So here are my takeaways, Brian. I'm going to say a bunch of them to you, just like with Nashville, and then you can comment on who you want. So we get Riley Nash on line 1, a prime spot with Marchand and Pasternak, of course. No points yesterday versus Montreal, but he had a goal and an assist on Tuesday versus Carolina. Then he had 2 assists on Thursday in the crazy 8-4 win over Pittsburgh. So he is looking really good in that spot. No power play time, but hey, line 1 with Marchand and Pasternak, that at least puts him in Lucic territory for what it's worth, and he's actually getting some points. Then we have Rick Nash, who is already getting top power play time after joining the team, and now that's obviously cemented with Bergeron gone. Like, he's not going anywhere, and Rick Nash has been so good. He has 2 goals and 1 assist and 23 shots in 4 games for the Bruins so far. I imagine he's got to be owned in any league. We've said that about some other players. Rick Nash might be the guy I say that about the most, especially if your league counts shots, which I'm sure it does. Great spot for David Backes now on the top power play with Bergeron out. Nothing much to show for it yet, but lots of shots and lots of hits lately. Probably as valuable as he'll ever get in a Bangers and Mash league at this point. So if you ever were to want David Backes, now would be the time to add him. Then we get David Krejci, who's kind of getting dissed, I feel like Bergeron injured. You think that's now his opportunity to jump to line 1 and power play 1. But no, Krejci, you stay on line 2. You stay on the second power play. You don't get to go anywhere. But hey, he's still rolling, doing well. He had a hat trick a couple games ago in that game against Pittsburgh. And then, yeah, there's Gianta. Like I said, he's in a nice spot. So, Brian, what are your thoughts on this whole Bergeron situation? I assume Rick Nash is owned, and obviously Backes is golden in a Bangers and Mash league. Who do you like best of all these other potential free agents on the Boston Bruins? Because Boston does have a very nice 4-game schedule next week. So one of these guys could make for a very good ad, at least for the short term.
You kind of covered a whole lot of ground there. So I think I'll just say my part quickly, which is that I suppose all of them are worth a look, although that's not a helpful thing to say at all. We've been surprised with Boston's secondary scoring all year long, though it's certainly tapered off from guys like Danton Heinen and DeBrusk, who've been very quietly lately. David Krejci is the one who's probably the one who's most likely to be available in your league that I am into. Of course, Rick Nash as well. Riley Nash would be after Krejci. Nash would be before Krejci. Rick Nash would be before Krejci. It's really frustrating to have 2 R Nashes, 2 RI Nashes on the same team. I'm adjusting. Anyway, I just want Bergeron back so badly. Thank goodness for Rick Nash that the Bruins are trying Riley at first line center so that Rick can still play with David Krejci, which could be good for both Rick and David.
Okay, hopefully the listeners followed along for that. We'll try to get less confusing as we move forward. While we're here, let's talk about the defense on Boston. So Torrey Krug, by the way, has 5 points in his last 3 games. He took 10 shots yesterday versus Montreal. He's currently on pace to beat his season high of 51 points from last year. He has 43 in 59 games. Torrey Krug is so good. And we've told you that. He's been on cold streaks before, and we've said, don't worry about it. He's really good. He's on an amazing top power play, so hope you have him. Nothing to ask about him. The guy we got to talk about is Charlie McAvoy, who was hurt yesterday. He left the game with a lower body injury. Mallory in the chat room here asked if anyone's heard about the McAvoy injury. Unfortunately, I haven't heard much. We don't know yet how long he's going to be out. Hopefully, it won't be for long. He's been on a nice run. He has 6 points in his last 5 games. But with him out, I feel like one guy who might benefit is Nick Holden. He's like the John Gilmore of the Boston Bruins. It's like, what? This guy? But he's in a nice spot. He actually has 2 assists in 2 games as a member of the Bruins. He actually came over in the trade with the Rangers. So for people who don't know, Nick Holden is on Boston, and he's been getting second unit power play time with Charlie McAvoy out, or at least he did for a bit in that last game where McAvoy got injured. And also Nick Holden has 10 shots in his 2 games he's played for Boston. So I would definitely add him to your watch list, especially if news comes out that McAvoy will be out for a while. What do you think about Nick Holden, Brian?
Not terribly excited about him. I am happy that Torrey Krug is back on track, though, and we can stop answering questions about people wanting to drop him. He's always had this upside and potential. It's been unfortunate that there have been a few long dry spells over the last couple of years. We've been wondering what's going to happen and if McAvoy is going to take over, but I'm glad he is firmly establishing himself as the team's best offensive defenseman.
Man, Brian, that was a bit of a wet blanket thing. You totally just dismissed my whole Nick Holden thing. Did you see? I did all this research. I bet you didn't even realize. I bet you most people don't even realize he had 4 shots in his first game with Boston, and he had an assist. Then he had 6 shots yesterday versus Montreal and got another assist. That's good. What else do you want? He's been playing over 20 minutes. Now there's an opening on the second power play. I mean, in a deepish league, you got to at least take a look at Nick Holden, right?
You're right. He has a bigger role. He's playing a couple more minutes a night already on average, like in his first 2 games with Boston, for what that's worth. He was averaging 19 minutes over the last 2 years with the Rangers. Sorry. He was averaging 19 minutes so far this year with the Rangers. It's nice that he's played 20 and a half and 22 minutes. And that's giving him more opportunities for shots. Elon, everyone should definitely go out and add Nick Holden right now. No, I'm just joking. But let me ask you, who would you prefer between Nick Holden and John Gilmore?
Nick Holden.
Nick Holden and Anthony D'Angelo.
Nick Holden.
Nick Holden and Sami Vatanen.
Vatanen.
Nick Holden and Zach Werenski.
Werenski.
Okay, now rank them all.
Okay, Vatanen, Werenski, Holden, and then the Rangers guys.
Wow, good retention. I could not hold you to, like, if you asked me what are the names of the guys you brought up, I would have had no idea. What a guy. Very skilled.
Let us know on Twitter at Keeping Karlsson what you think of my ranking. Okay, so that's all the trades I want to talk about. Let's look at some injuries now. So Max Pacioretty was also hurt in this game versus the Bruins. I mentioned McAvoy before. Also, Victor Mete was injured. So this was a very dangerous game that happened between the Habs and the Bruins. The Rotoworld update for Pacioretty suggested that maybe he'll get shut down just like his fellow Hab Shea Weber and Carey Price, who knows if he'll be coming back. So, like, what a season for the Habs. What a terrible season for the Montreal Canadiens. I'm sure Matthew is here in the chat room just crying, or maybe he's already given up on the year. Maybe this is good news because it's a better chance for them to tank, lose all their games, and then get a chance at, what's his name?
Well, I don't know. You think I know how to pronounce it? Rasmus Dahlin? Dahlin?
Yeah. Sorry, I know how.
I'm guessing it's Dahlin, but I'm open to every possible pronunciation at this point. Okay. Rasmus Dahlin.
I mean, I know what it is. Okay, I just forgot his name. Chance to get Rasmus Dahlin, though Antiniemi isn't helping by playing really well, as I said earlier. I'll get to him in a sec. Let's take a look at the Habs with Pacioretty out. Looks like they put Drouin, Galchenyuk, and Gallagher on the same line after this Pacioretty injury. Though, first, we'll have to see, once they have time to really digest this, what they're going to do. But hey, good news for Drouin, Galchenyuk, and Gallagher, right? They get to play on a good line with each other. Bad news for like everyone else on the Habs who won't have any good line mates to play with. Paul Byron was on the top power play with those guys in Petrie for what it's worth at the end of the last game. But I'd imagine there's like no reason to add Paul Byron. So I don't even know if there's really any comment to make on the Habs, except that they're probably going to not score as many goals with Max Pacioretty out. Not that Max Pacioretty has been so amazing this year. He's actually been very disappointing. We had a question on our Facebook group of what we actually expect out of him for next year. And I was like, I don't know, a 60 to 65 point pace. But obviously we have to really look into it. He'll be definitely a guy we'll bring up in our summer series, and we'll dig into what went wrong with Max Pacioretty this year. But Brian, let's talk about Antiniemi. Do we need to now declare him as the probable starter for the rest of the year, or at least until Price comes back for the Habs? Like, I thought that it was going to be Charlie Lindgren who would come up and Niemi would kind of suck, and then Lindgren would get a chance to show what he's got for the rest of the year. But Niemi's been great. He has a .936 save percentage in his last 8 games for Montreal. And Niemi, he's holding off Lindgren. I think he's going to be the starter for now, though, of course, there is the chance that he has a big blow up and then Lindgren gets the next game and then everything changes. But for now, should people be going out and adding Antiniemi? I feel dirty just asking.
You should probably consider it. You're not going to be guaranteed anything. You can hope that he continues this run. You can hope that that helps Niemi and the Habs pick up some wins. We talked about, again, I don't remember if this was on the last week or the Patreon cast, so forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but the Habs have made a commitment to Lindgren, right? They just signed him to a 3-year deal where I think the plan is for him to be someone who lessens Carey Price's workload, like not just a number 2, but a functional number 2. Not just someone who's riding the pine 65 games a year. So I wonder if they're looking for an opportunity to get Lindgren in, or if they're happy to let Niemi just keep rolling if he gets a longer leash because of all that he's done. No idea, except that good for Niemi for probably, or I shouldn't say probably because I have no idea, but maybe he has just saved his career. Maybe he's added another year to the length of his time in the NHL. I could totally see Niemi backing up in like Edmonton next year.
Yeah, that would be pretty funny. And then Talbot gets injured. Then Niemi gets to go on a run like this once again. It's very strange. Like, or maybe Antiniemi would be smart. I don't know what his financial situation is. Maybe it would be smart to like retire now high. Like, I was thinking like, oh, what a terrible end to his career. He was like so terrible in Pittsburgh. I thought he'd never play another NHL game. I was so shocked when Florida signed him. Then he was terrible there. Then I was so shocked when Montreal signed him. I was like, poor guy. He's going to go out as a laughingstock. Now he gets to go out as a hero, or whatever you would call playing well for the Habs down the stretch while they try to tank for Dahlin. But yeah, looking good. Like, Brian, Niemi or Chad Johnson for next week, assuming similar competition?
I will take Niemi. Elon, over under on Niemi Habs jerseys that have been sold. 100. Over under.
Under.
Definitely. I would love to see one, though.
What a terrible purchase. He played 8 games for the team. Okay. Next injury, Matt Murray got hit in the head with a puck during practice on Monday and suffered a concussion. So that is terrible luck, though he skated on Friday. So perhaps he won't be out too long, which makes me breathe a big sigh of relief. As I've mentioned that I made my bet on the Pittsburgh Penguins to win the cup this year. And I do not feel as confident if Matt Murray is not there, especially since the goalies haven't been too great after him. So Casey DeSmith got first crack on Tuesday as the starter on Pittsburgh, while Murray was out, and he played well. He stopped 35 of 38 shots in a 3-2 loss to New Jersey, and that earned Casey DeSmith the next start, where he got pummeled for 3 goals against on 5 shots before getting pulled in the crazy game they had against Boston. Then Tristan Jarry came in relief for Casey DeSmith in that game against Boston, and he continued the brutal game. He led in 5 goals on 33 shots, but then he still got the start on Friday versus the Islanders, and he had a pretty good game. 25 of 27 shots saved, got the 3-2 win. So I'd imagine now the ball is in Tristan Jarry's court moving forward. Pittsburgh has 4 games next week, playing Calgary on Monday, Philly on Wednesday, Toronto on Saturday, and Dallas on Sunday. How do you see this shaking out, Brian? Do you have any confidence in either of these guys to put up decent numbers in the games they play? At the end of the day, they play on the Pittsburgh Penguins. There's going to be a shot for a win for sure whenever they play. And I'm guessing right now we're leaning towards Jarry since he's the last one to have had a good game.
Yeah, that's why I have some confidence in DeSmith or Jarry. I have confidence that Pittsburgh is going to give them a shot to win most nights, even when Jarry or DeSmith may not deserve to. It's not necessarily a sure thing. Like, Pittsburgh is not flying way high above the rest of the league in terms of, like, if you're looking to try and measure team performance. I sometimes look at expected goal differential over the last 5 games, which is available, by the way, over at Sean Tierney's Tableau site. Charting Hockey is his name on Twitter. You can find the link through there. I credit it at the end of the show. Anyway, back to Jarry and DeSmith. If you made me pick a guy to commit to as the Pittsburgh coach, not a fantasy player, but as the Pittsburgh coach for the next 4 games, I would go DeSmith based on the numbers they've put up so far, which show that DeSmith has outperformed his expected save percentage by about 0.004%, which sounds small, but in hockey, it's kind of a big deal. That's like posting a 914 when a 910 was expected, whereas Jarry is underperforming compared to his expected save percentage, posting a 911 when the expected even strength number for him is 919, which is interesting because both goalies have pretty different expected save percentage numbers at even strength while playing for the same team. That's probably a function of Jarry having almost 600 more minutes played to get a bigger sample. Also, how the Pens were doing during his first Murray replacement stint. But back to the matter at hand, back to the question you asked, Elon, which guy do I want this week between Jarry and DeSmith, or compared to Niemi? I want either one over Niemi. You didn't ask that though, so now I'm sticking my neck out for no reason, which is foolish. Okay. Seems like DeSmith is the guy if all things are equal, but Pens are also letting the results determine who starts. So if one goalie gets more games than the other, my guess is going to be that it's DeSmith who gets them, but it's really a total guess because if Jarry plays well on Monday, if he does get to play on Monday and plays well, I imagine it's close enough between the two that they're happy to go with whoever is giving them wins. And I've been wrong about it since Murray's gone. And I've been wrong about this since Murray's been injured and during the previous injury too. So my track record for guessing between Jarry and DeSmith is not very good.
Okay, Brian, normally I'm the one who rambles. That was like a rare stretch for you to just sort of talk about Jarry and DeSmith. I don't even know if you actually said very much. It sounds like you said you think DeSmith is better because of some expected save percentage numbers, but who knows what will actually happen moving into the next week. I do think that Jarry's going to get the next game for what it's worth. We'll move on from there.
Do you want to repeat that or should I go?
No, just go.
I said DeSmith is better based on expected save percentage numbers.
Yeah. I heard that. That was great. Great take, Brian. Thank you. Okay, so let's, obviously, since we're on Pittsburgh, we got to do it. Got to look at their lines, just because, as you know, as a listener keeping Karlsson, you're probably tired of this. You could skip forward a minute if you don't care, but there's always value to be had in free agency if you have a player playing with Crosby or Malkin, of course. So yesterday, versus the Islanders, they had Crosby with Gensel and Hornqvist, Malkin with Rust and Hagelin, then Brassard with Kessel and Simone. Top power play was as it usually is. Nothing special there. So Derek Brassard scored a goal yesterday. A minute later, Brian, you texted me saying, oh, Brassard looking good on the Penguins. Sure, he has a goal and an assist in 3 games so far, which is a great pace, 2 points every 3 games. If he hadn't scored a goal yesterday, we would have been able to say, wow, he's on a terrible pace, only 1 point in every 3 games. So pretty small sample size, but great to see him score a goal yesterday for sure. Rust and Hagelin haven't done much playing with Malkin lately, so I'd imagine either the lines will get shaken up again, or one of them will do well, because you can't play with Malkin for too long and not do well. So definitely keep your eye on Hagelin and Rust. Brian, I won't even waste your time with a question of who's looking good on this nice 4-game schedule for the Penguins next week. You guys all know the drill. If you can get a player playing with Crosby or Malkin, you're in good shape. Maybe even Dominic Simone playing with Kessel and Brassard could be good. But keep in mind, the lines can change at the drop. But keep in mind, the lines can change at the drop of a dime. So definitely don't bank on any of these guys. Like, I know you're going to see, Pittsburgh's playing Monday. Pittsburgh's playing Monday and Wednesday, so I might as well grab Brian Rust, and I'll get 2 games of him playing with Malkin. Who knows if after Monday he actually still plays with Malkin on Wednesday. So add these players at your own risk. And Brian, by the way, my pick of getting Malkin to win the Art Ross that I haphazardly made a few episodes ago is looking like okay, but not great. At this point, Kucherov has 85 points, and then Malkin is tied with McNabb. Damn. And Malkin is tied with McDavid at 79 points. So even if Malkin stays healthy the rest of the year, I feel like he's going to get rested in the last week or so. And so McDavid will probably play the whole way since Edmonton's not going to be making the playoffs. So it'll be really tough for Malkin to take this. I think it's at this point between Kucherov and McDavid. Do you want to make an updated pick of who you think it's going to be between Kucherov, McDavid, or the field?
I'm going to stick with Kucherov, who I think is who I said the last time we did this, so I'm just going to stay the course. I see no reason to change. And by the way, like you usually ask me about the Penguins players, and I hate to comment on them, but I just wanted to point out Jake Gensel in the 4-game week, he is heating up, so if he's been forgotten in your league, still inconsistent, but maybe worth a shot, while Brian Rust and Carl Hagelin have cooled down. But of course, that does not predict what's going to happen in the next 4 Penguins games, just so you know the latest.
Yeah, I would also take Gensel at the top of these guys if he's available in free agency. Playing with Crosby and Hornqvist, that's a really good line, of course. Okay, next injury. Josh Anderson will be out for around 4 weeks for Columbus with a knee sprain. He's gone in and out of fantasy relevance throughout the year, but I thought I would mention him, and he might be a decent sleeper pick for next year. Like, don't forget about Josh Anderson, who was getting some line 1 time. So Columbus is playing today. Lately, the Blue Jackets have been running Atkinson, Dubois, and Marin on their top line in power play. And I should mention that the newly acquired Thomas Vanek and Seth Jones have been with them on the top power play. So I guess at this point, Dubois is looking really good, right? If you could get him playing on the top line and top power play, he goes hot and cold, but I like him right now. He's pointless in 3, but I'd imagine it won't last long while he's in this good spot. Columbus, by the way, their game hasn't started. They're playing against San Jose later on. Also, Thomas Vanek, he has nothing so far in 2 games, playing at even strength with Jenner and Dubinsky. Lately, I'm not interested in him at all. What about you, Brian?
I'm not that interested in Thomas Vanek either. I don't see his role increasing a whole lot compared to what he was doing in Vancouver. He's just another piece in the Columbus middle 9? No, top. He's just another piece in the Columbus 9. Sorry. He's just another piece in the Columbus top 9 that may get a point here and there, but nothing dependable. Just 3 shots in 2 games as of time of recording as a Blue Jacket. So I'm going to want to see more from him before my interest is piqued. One thing I did note, I saw the lines tweeted out for tonight's game, and it's now Vanek, Jenner, and Wenberg. So instead of Dubinsky, Wenberg is a centerman, which is an upgrade, but it still doesn't make me any more excited.
Yeah, Vanek, I would think, would have me interested just because he's on the top power play, kind of like Pat Maroon. Like, doesn't matter where he's playing at even strength, but he's on a top power play. Though, of course, this New Jersey top power play with Taylor Hall is a lot more appealing to me right now than the Columbus top power play. So I'd say of any guy on Columbus, I would want Dubois. That might be a free agent. I should mention that Cam Atkinson has been really good lately. He has 5 points in his last 4 games, 9 points in his last 11 games. We'll have to look at him again in the summer. We said going into this year that we didn't expect him to repeat his amazing year from last year. And it seemed like we were right for a while, but then he got injured. And lately he's been really good though. So who knows? For next year, maybe we'll have to update our prediction of like what type of player we think that Cam Atkinson is. But for now, Brian, I'm ready to get into some hot streaks and cold streaks to close out the show. And we've got to start in Vancouver, where Daniel Sedin is on fire. He's got 8 goals and 6 assists in his last 10 games. That's 14 points in 10 games for Daniel Sedin. What year is this? And of course, Henrik right along with him, 8 assists in that span over these last 10 games. Now's a great time, by the way, to add a Sedin. Like Vancouver plays next week on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Sunday, 4 off-day games. It's the best schedule you can get in fantasy. And this top power play of Besser, Horvat, the Sedins, and Edler is killing her. And Edler is killer right now. I would definitely want any of these guys if I can. Maybe not Henrik Sedin, just because he's so useless in other categories aside from assists and power play points. But Daniel, you got to add him. Also, Alex Edler, like he's been so clutch. Like he was a free agent ad in pretty much all leagues. I doubt he was drafted in any leagues. And he has 6 assists in the last 10 games, which is pretty good for a defenseman. Plus 4 of those have been on the power play, and he's getting a ton of hits and blocks and shots. Alex Edler, really, really good. So, Brian, I know you're concerned that the Sedins will slow down. We talked about him on the Patreon cast very quickly on Thursday, but Daniel's got to be a must-add at this point if someone still... Daniel's got to be a must-add at this point if somehow he's still available.
You've got to do that again.
I know you're concerned that the Sedins will slow down. We talked about him on Thursday's Patreon cast, but I feel like Daniel has got to be a must-add at this point if somehow he's still available, at least for next week. He's on an amazing hot streak, and he has an amazing schedule. Like, what more can you want?
Nothing. You couldn't want any. Well, you could want him to absolutely keep it up for this week while he's on your team in a great off-night schedule. And Elon, you mentioned his name quickly. I just want to repeat it. Henrik Sedin, also worth considering, more likely to be available in your league. He's on a 5-game point streak, 1 assist in each of those 5 games, 3 of them on the power play. And even going back like 10 games, like you said, Elon, before this run, he'd be getting a point every other game or so. Currently, Henrik has 41 assists. And according to the Dave Betton shots on goal versus assist counter, Henrik Sedin needs 12 more to match his. Henrik Sedin is 12 assists short of his current shot total. It's unlikely that it happens, but we can still dream, right?
Yeah, that would be pretty funny. But yeah, Matt. Yeah, that would be pretty funny, but I think it's pretty unlikely to happen at this point. Henrik's probably going to still take a couple more shots before the season is over. So even if he gets those 12 assists, I don't think it'll be enough. Okay, next hot streak, Brian. If you've been waiting on Nick Bjugstad, I'm talking to you, the listener now. If you've been waiting on Nick Bjugstad, I'd suggest you wait no longer and grab him before it is too late. He's been the Konechny to Barkov's Couturier and the Dadonov to Konechny's Giroux, putting up 5 points in his last 5 games and 9 points in his last 10 games. And that's before today, by the way. Bjugstad had points again today. So what I'm saying is Travis Konechny was like, got to the top line on Philly, wasn't on the top power play. We were like, oh, it's a good spot for him. Let's see how it goes. And then he kept getting points and points and points. At some point, it was like, okay, you got to grab Travis Konechny. And at this point, Konechny's probably owned in all leagues. And I'm seeing the exact same pattern from Nick Bjugstad. Not only does he have 9 points in his last 10 games going into today, he also had 34 shots in that span, so he's helping you a lot there. I feel like if you regret missing out on Konechny, why not go out and grab Nick Bjugstad? In fact, Brian, I don't know, would I be crazy to suggest that I'd prefer Bjugstad over Konechny at this point? Like, just looking at the players they're playing with, obviously we love Konechny because he's playing with Giroux and Couturier, but like Barkov, he's so good. Like Alex Barkov, is he underrated? I don't even know, but he is just as good as any player on the Philly top line, at least lately. He has 19 points in his last 14 games. Dadonov has 14 points in his last 10 games, and Florida is just on fire. Plus, Bjugstad takes a lot of shots. I don't know. I'm not sure that I would actually drop Konechny for Nick Bjugstad, but I see them as similar. What do you think of this take? Is this too crazy of a take? And I know actually some news came out today that Bjugstad got bumped from the top line for a short time, though then news came out that maybe that won't last. So I don't know if that changes things for me, but as I was writing this, I was really high on Nick Bjugstad.
Yeah, and I think you can be high on Nick Bjugstad. Go get him if he's available in your league. I was reading some stuff by Matthew DeFranks, the Florida beat writer for the Sun Sentinel, and he seems pretty sold on the idea that top-line Bjugstad can be a thing based on the results the Panthers are getting from it. And why not, right? If you can move Jonathan Huberdeau off your top line, have that top line not miss a beat, and then inject Huberdeau and then parachute Huberdeau into somewhere else in the lineup where he can help create offense, that makes sense. Of course, this whole setup can change again anytime, but in the short term, I am interested in Nick Bjugstad. I like his shot counts a touch more than oh my gosh, sorry. A touch more than Konechny's, though Konechny has been doing just fine in that department lately. He has just one fewer shot over his last 4 games than Bjugstad. Thing is that I don't know, like, when you're looking at who do you like more between Konechny and Bjugstad, this Florida line is super hot. The Philadelphia line is cooled off, and that balance is going to shift again over the course of the rest of the season. So all things being equal, both lines clicking as they would, they're probably pretty similar. I would be a little more hesitant than you to swap out Konechny for Bjugstad because I'm just waiting to be totally sold on Bjugstad staying there. But it does seem like it's going to be a thing now. I'd say they're both equally valuable.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I was actually saying that people should drop Konechny for Bjugstad. I just see them as similar. I think I would actually hold Konechny, but I would try to find a spot for Bjugstad if you can, just because he's on this super hot line. Alex Barkov, so amazing. You tweeted today, you think he has a future. I agree. We were worried about Barkov because of his injury concerns. Like, he's always been so good, but he got injured every year. Don't want to jinx it. I probably just did, but I think that it's really nice seeing him put up a season of not getting injured, and he's showing us just how good he could be, which is fan-freaking-tastic. And by the way, a quick note on Florida, Dennis Malgin has been out with an injury, and the Panthers have been trying out different options for his spot with Trocheck and Huberdeau on line 2. Radim Verbata and Connor Brinkley have both been seeing some time there and haven't done anything with it. I was just looking at the practice lines today, and it seems like Jamie McGinn was practicing there on the line with Huberdeau and Trocheck. So it's a really good line, so might be worth watching to see who lands there and if he could do anything. Might be McGinn. So add him to your watch list. Okay, next hot streak, Brian. With his goal today, Toivo Teravainen on Carolina has a goal in 6 of his last 7 games. Almost every game, he scores a goal. Who is he? Taylor Hall? It's Toivo Teravainen. He's looking really good. He's up to 52 points in 66 games. That's a 65-point pace. He's now just slightly behind Sebastian Aho's pace. Aho has 51 points in 62 games, which is around a 68-point pace compared to Teravainen's 65-point pace. Doubtful that Teravainen is out there right now. If he's available, I'm assuming we'll say that we should add him. I know we've said that about a lot of people, so you got to compare a lot of people, but I really like Toivo right now. He's not available in any of my leagues, but I wonder how long he'll fall in drafts next year, just because I don't think people think of Toivo Teravainen as someone that you have to draft high. Like, I know everyone is going to be drafting Sebastian Aho, and I'll bet you that you could get Toivo Teravainen a few rounds later in your draft, and maybe they're actually the same. Like, what do you think? Am I being crazy right now in saying that Teravainen might be almost as valuable as Aho in drafts next year?
You're not crazy, because Teravainen, like, he's had his dry spells this year. He's been very streaky. So has Aho. Aho's come out with a bit more than Teravainen at the end of the day. And I also wonder how much you're getting too excited about Teravainen's value based on the fact that he has scored 5 goals on his last 16 shots. So that's a more than 30% shooting conversion rate, which of course won't continue. I don't need to tell you that. Everybody knows, like, if Teravainen scored 5 goals in his last 5 games, like, obviously, I don't need to tell you that's unsustainable. I would still much prefer Sebastian Aho, but maybe Teravainen deserves to be drafted in the later rounds next year as opposed to plucked off the free agent pile. Maybe he's surpassed Elias Lindholm as the next most likely Hurricane after Skinner and Aho to get 2 points.
Yeah, and Skinner versus Teravainen is actually a whole other conversation, because Skinner has been pretty disappointing. But a conversation for another day. People in the chat room are freaking out because they're just finding out that Nylander is on the 3rd line on Toronto. Like, we talked about this last week, right? Like, Austin Matthews is injured. So for the short term, Nylander's not in a great spot. Like, he's been playing with Hyman and Plekanec, who just came from Montreal. So yeah, like, now's not a good time for Nylander. But if you're thinking, like, there was a question of drop Nylander for, who was it, Konechny or someone. By the way, this chat room is a whole bunch of drop this guy for this guy, this guy for this guy. It's tough in here. Man, like, if I was paying attention to the chat room, like, there's some really tough questions. But anyways, I wouldn't drop Nylander unless you need help, like, ASAP. Like, unfortunately, Toronto actually has a very bad schedule next week. They only play twice, so it's going to be a really rough week to have to hold Nylander, get hardly any games, and have him on a bad line. But if you can get through that week, once Austin Matthews is back, then Nylander goes right back to playing with Austin Matthews on what I'd imagine is the top line on Toronto. So hope that helps people in the chat room. Yeah, like, I'm sorry about Nylander now, but he'll obviously be good when Matthews is back. Okay, Brian, next hot streak I wanted to bring up is Antti Ranta. Man, remember how we said that we thought he'd be, like, great for save percentage, or at least good for save percentage, but don't expect many wins? And I know we did actually predict. I want to, like, give us a bit of a pat on the back. We said, like, we think that Arizona could get a few wins. Like, this is around the midway point, like around the All-Star game. We're saying they could be a sneaky team that could get more wins than they did in the first half of the year. But I don't think anyone expected that Antti Ranta would have won 6 of his last 7 decisions, which he has done with a .952 save percentage in that span. So Antti Ranta is hot, hot, hot. as are the Arizona Coyotes. How is Arizona winning all of these games? What is happening? Is this luck, or are they actually a decent team now? And if Ranta is still a free agent in your league, I'm just going to start calling you out as being in clown league. Like, Ranta should be owned. He's really good, and now Arizona even is potentially winning games. But even if they don't, he gets you a ton of saves, and he puts up really good numbers. He's a really good goalie.
He's a really good goalie, but he's still not on a very good team. So I don't know if I'd say that if Ranta's available in your league, it's a clown league. I still see reason for him not to be owned, although the reasons for him to be owned are pretty compelling since he went 7-1-1 in his last 9 decisions. So just one regulation loss for Ranta in his last 9 games. He's got a .944 save percentage in that stretch too, and he's had to be that amazing to earn the wins that he's gotten. 3 of Ranta's 4 last wins, 3 of Ranta's last 4 wins have come with very, very weak goal support to the tune of 2 goals or fewer scored by his teammates. And although Arizona is presently posting one of their high watermarks of the season in expected goals for differential, I'm not sure even that's enough to expect the wins to continue at or even near the rate they've been coming recently for anti-Ranta. So you can add him, but I'm not sure that he's going to keep getting wins when he only gets 1 or 2 goals worth of support.
Yeah, so that is fair. Like, add Ranta, not hoping for wins. They are a bonus cherry on top, and he's on a great run right now. But I do expect these good save percentage numbers to continue. Like, not a .952 save percentage, but I think above average is a reasonable expectation at this point, and it'll be very interesting to see where he ends up next year. And Brian, let's end with a cold streak. We've got to go to the New York Islanders and ask what is going on with John Tavares. His assist yesterday was his first point in 6 games, and he's only taken 1 or 2 shots in each of his last 5 or so games. Like, Tavares is doing nothing. He's doing worse than replacement level. This is a guy, like, he almost cost me my first round couple matchup by being so bad. If he would have just been average, I would have comfortably won my matchup. And instead, he's done nothing. What can we expect moving forward with him? Is this just a slump, or is he going to continue to be bad for the rest of the year? And not only is he doing badly, but he's taking Anders Lee and Josh Bailey down with him. Like, finally, yesterday, Anders Lee had a goal and an assist. Before that, he was pointless in 4 games. Josh Bailey, again, had points in his last game, but before that, he was pointless in 5. So, yeah, like, maybe now with this one good game that just happened, in which there was like a goal for that line, hopefully that's a sign of things to come. But, like, I'm still worried. I want you to either talk me off the ledge, like, not that I could do anything. I'm not going to drop John Tavares, but I have him in a couple leagues, and I just want to know, should I expect the worst moving forward, or do you think it's just, like, going to happen next week? He'll be back to being the near point per game guy that he's been all season long before this dry run.
It's been a really, really challenging time for John Tavares owners, especially anyone who had become acclimatized to the insane production he was offering through, I don't have a number, 40 games, say. But now Tavares is goalless in his last 6 games. Even more concerning about that, though, is that Tavares has only taken 10 shots in those 6 games. Over his last 9 games, Tavares has surpassed 2 shots just once, and there have been 4 occasions on which Tavares has registered 1 lone puck on net. Now, why am I banging this drum so hard? This is very strange behavior for Tavares, who is a guy who's averaged 3 shots per game since the 3rd year of his career, since he was 21. So I'm not sure exactly why the shots have dried up. His ice time has also taken a slight but still noticeable dip. And these are the sorts of things that make me wonder whether a player is playing through something, whether they're playing injured. Why would Tavares be playing injured while the Isles are still in the wild card hunt, but they've only won twice in their last 10? They're slipping out of the picture. I don't know what's going on, but maybe we'll find out if and when the Isles fade further out of the playoff hunt, if Tavares is hurt or if he's just, I don't know, not up to the task of continuing to do what he's essentially done for the last 6 or 7 years. I imagine the former is more likely. And by the way, for what it's worth, Matt Barzal still doing his job, pointless in his last 2, but he had 5 points in 3 games before that. And he's also seeing a small bump in ice time that sort of correlates, not correlates. What's the word I'm looking for? Commensurates. It is happening at the same time, coincides with Tavares's decrease in ice time.
Okay, crazy question for you, Brian. If you had to choose right now, you're running my fantasy team. I've gotten into an accident. I can't manage my team for the rest of the year. So somehow it's not the trade deadline. Why am I coming up with such a crazy scenario when
Yeah,
I could
that's
just
morbid. Why don't you just say, like, I need to step away for a minute?
Anyway, it's not even an option. But if I had the option right now to swap out Tavares and Barzal, would I do that, or would that be crazy?
Like, swap out Tavares for Barzal?
Yeah, for the rest of the season.
Oh, man. I wouldn't call you crazy just because, like, this is me totally speculating that something's up with Tavares. I would want to try and get a little more information because if he can bounce back, like if he just needs like a day off, then I would rather him. But if you're desperate, nah, I still wouldn't do it. But I could totally understand the thought. Would
Yeah.
you?
I don't know. I mean, it's very frustrating. I made it through. Now, Brian, in our joint league, we also have Tavares. We're going to need him to do something, please, if it wouldn't be too much. Like you say, and, by the way, this isn't completely unprecedented. Last year, there was a long stretch where Tavares was doing nothing, but then he was really great at the end of the year. So I don't know, maybe he goes cold, and hopefully he's learning some lessons, and now he'll be ready to go for our fantasy playoff surge. That's what we need you for, John Tavares. And with that, I guess, Brian, that's all of my content for this week's show. So this has been great takes all along. I don't know, do you have anything left to say? Or should we go and start wrapping this thing up?
We can wrap it up like
Okay.
a Christmas, like an Easter gift.
Okay,
No, we're
yeah.
not there yet. Do people give gifts? Like a leap day gift.
Is that, oh yeah, that just happened. Happy birthday to you, February 29th, people. But it wasn't even a leap year this year.
I was trying to reference Leap Day William from 30 Rock.
What? No, what? You reference 30 Rock so much. Why can't you reference like a more contemporary show like Seinfeld or like 30 Rock?
How is Seinfeld more contemporary than 30 Rock?
Just in terms of pop culture. Like no one makes 30 Rock.
It's not contemporary at all.
Seinfeld's probably still on more than like most shows that are currently being filmed now. Like I think it's on like 5 times a night if you scroll through the channels if someone has cable. Like I haven't had cable for a while, but I have a feeling Seinfeld is still making a lot of money in syndication.
Likely.
And I don't think 30 Rock is.
Likely.
Okay. Okay, wrapping up the show. So what do we do when we wrap up? We thank the listeners. Thank you for listening. We appreciate it. If you have given us a 5-star review on iTunes in the past, or if you've subscribed to us on iTunes or any other device, something that kind of helps the show, we really appreciate that. Of course, we're giving you this show for free out of the goodness of our hearts. And, if you wanted to help us out in that very simple way, we wouldn't mind. But do you. Don't worry about it either way. We just are happy that you're listening and hopefully enjoying the show. You could tweet at us at Keeping Karlsson. Let us know what we could be doing to make the show better, what we can help you with more going into your fantasy playoffs as the season approaches its end. It's always fun to be a little experimental as we go into the end of the year. Of course, we have our Patreon program. So I did say for free, but you can get bonus stuff. We not only do this episode, which is for free, we also do an extra episode every week for our patrons where we answer mailbag questions and end up just talking about what's been going on in fantasy over the last few days. So if you like our show, you want to get some bonus content, there's also other perks from being a patron. So I won't bore you with all of that, but you can check out keepingkarlsson.com/patron and get a little bonus for your fantasy playoffs. Sign up even for a month or two, then you can cancel. Maybe you'll like it. Maybe you'll get hooked. We have a really fun patron community over on Facebook if you want to commit to that amount. Brian, with that though, I think I'm done. So how about we cue the outro music? And how about how about you go ahead and read us the credits?
All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including our newest one. All right. This episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey podcast was supported by Dauber Hockey. Nope. All right, this episode of the Keeping Karlsson Hockey podcast was presented by Dauber Hockey and supported by our patrons, including our newest ones, Shams L, Andrew, Lucas A, Sarah J. Thank you all for joining us at this point in the season. We really appreciate it. This episode was researched with help from Dauber Hockey, Frozen Pool, Dauber Prospects, Corsica, Natural Stat Trick, Charting Hockey, HockeyGoldies.org, Hockey Reference, Hockey Viz, Hockey Database, Elite Prospects, Roto World, and Fantrax.
Damn, Brian, that's a long list of citations. You did a lot of work for this show. So great job, as always. And we will catch all of you for another episode next Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Time if you want to join us live at keepingkarlsson.com/live. Plus, we'll talk to our patrons later in the week for the mailbag show.
Until then, keep on keeping Karlsson.
Woo! Was that a good show? I don't know. Hard to say. I had fun. What do you guys think?
Fun. I think it was good.
Talked about a lot of stuff.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of rambling. But somehow, I don't know how we do it, Brian. Like, I don't, as I'm prepping, have it in my, I don't know. Somehow we always end up being around 90 minutes. Like, I feel like somehow we always end up there. Do we like speed up as we approach the end? I don't even know. But somehow we got through everything. And it's the same time as most of our episodes.
Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't tell you.
Also, you always say, go ahead. Go ahead.
I also know we make more errors as the show goes on. Like, fatigue is definitely a factor.
Yeah. Is that so? Is that something we could fix? What should we have like a intermission halfway through? Go for a walk, like clear our heads?
No. I don't
think
know
it's
what we should
the
do.
chat room. I think it's the chat room getting in your head, Brian. You and Twitter.
No,
last
I was
week.
as involved with the chat room. Actually, I was less involved over the second half.
Okay. Oh, thank you in the chat room. Mallory's saying it was a wicked fun show, and that it's them bugging us. By the way, Matthew, I believe I did win my matchup, unless something crazy happened while we were recording. I could go, but I was up at like 4 goals. I don't think that my opponent had 5 goals in the time. No, I'm gonna win 5-2 right now. So crushing it. Sorry, Brett. I'm sure he's not listening to this, but you had a good run. Now it's time to go. But Brian, I'm so disappointed because I thought finally I could have these stupid Vegas Golden Knights out of my life. He has Karlsson and Riley Smith and Colin Miller. So it's like every time that top line scores, he's been getting multiple points. Now I finally get to move on to Dustin, and he has Marchessault. So I'm still going to have Vegas as the bane of my existence. Hopefully we'll be able to finally get rid of them after that match.
I even had an episode title ready for when like the whole team crashed, but it never happened. It was going to be Golden Slumbers. It's a Beatles song.
Okay. I don't know that song. That sounds good. That
would like it.
Would have been good. I'll check it out right now.
That is actually one that you'd like.
Here, one sec. Hey Google, play Golden Slumbers by the Beatles. Let's see if this works.
All right, Golden Slumbers.
There's also a cover from the I Am Sam soundtrack of it that you might like.
Okay, how do I... Wait, one sec. Okay, Google, 100% volume. It's nice.
Yeah, this is an Elon enjoying song.
It's very like, oh, this would be good for work. Just relax. All right. I like your episode title. Okay, okay, Google. Pause. That's the problem. Once you turn it up loud, it's hard to get it to shut up. Yeah, I like your Haul Your Girlfriend episode name. I really hope you haven't replaced that. That's amazing. That's one of my favorite.
But did we talk enough about Taylor Hall to use it?
Doesn't matter. Taylor Hall's so good. Did you see my tweet, by the way?
I was thinking we would need who was I gonna try and center it around?
No, but I feel like you have to do Taylor Hall.
Bjugstad or
go Haul Your Girlfriend, because it's like Taylor Hall's all over Twitter right now. Everyone loves tweeting about how like comparing him to Adam Larson is so fun. They keep retweeting that Bob McKenzie tweet of like, it's Hall for Larson 1 for 1.
Yeah,
which is so funny.
That's an all-timer.
And then also now people are saying how Taylor Hall should maybe get consideration for the Hart Trophy over Connor McDavid, which is even more hilarious.
That's hilarious.
And it's like reasonable. So like he's all over Twitter right now. So I think we got to get in on that SEO and call it Haul Your Girlfriend. Plus, I love that song.
I don't think it would help us with our SEO. I was looking at Bjugstad, Reinhardt, and Stasny, but we can do Hall.
I've made my request. Anyways, unless you think we'll talk about him next week, I'm sure we'll just mention him every week as this point streak continues. Haul Your Girlfriend. What would be the rest of the lyrics here? Time to get a point. Every game in.
Work on it.
New Jersey is... What rhymes with point? Oh.
Anoint.
Okay, yeah, we got to write this out. But someone asked us for the mailbag show to write a Taylor Haul Your Girlfriend parody, and I might bring that out. So, okay, what are we doing here? Should we go? People are still chatting in the chat room. Columbus is beating San Jose. Anyways, I don't know. Let's go. This was fun. I got to edit.
Okay.
Anything else you want to talk about, Brian?
Nope. We're
what
good.
do we do with this? That's too bad about this Nick Bjugstad thing. I hope that we didn't totally blow it by us talking about how good he is, and then he'll actually not even be on the top line next game.
Well, his coach says he will be.
Yeah, but then what if he has a bad practice? Like, I guess, so what does it mean? Like, he had a bad game? I don't know much about psychology. Do you think it's just sort of like he's not feeling well? Could be that.
Maybe. I just got a text from Josie saying Kobe Bryant just won an Oscar.
For what? He's in a movie?
How is that possible?
Huh. Maybe like a documentary
About what?
about basketball. What else would it be about? I don't know.
About Los Angeles.
But I know there isn't.
About showing the haters.
Yeah, I mean, that's like definitely there's a best documentary. That would be my guess as to what it'd be. I don't think he was an actor in a movie. It must be him playing himself. Oh, short film. Okay.
Short film.
That's nice.
Well, maybe I should watch it.
I mean,
animated? I feel like it was animated.
You should see. No, there was a.
Oh, it was animated. I was right.
That's funny. I heard about a really funny animated movie with Dennis Rodman that came out somewhat recently. I heard a podcast about it and it sounded good. So I think if I'm going to see an animated movie about a basketball player, it might be that one.
That is something I would expect to be in a foreign language and dubbed over.
Yeah, that would be that would be good. All right. Let's go. Bye, everyone. Thanks. I wish I had a good last thing to say, but alas, we soldier on to another week of fantasy success.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye. Thanks, everybody.